Hello, family, peace and blessings to all of you. How are you all doing? Yeah, it's been a while. I pray that you all are doing well, that you're blessed, you have health in your bodies, a sound mind. I pray that your families are doing well. Thank you all for joining me for another session. I saw some of the comments where folks are like, I got my Tupperware ready. Okay, I believe you're going to be blessed by what is shared tonight. So yeah, get your sword and let's dig into this. So I will say hello to some folks in a bit. I do want to go ahead and get started because we have so much to cover as usual, but I want to avoid having folks nodding out on me near the end because I believe that it's a lot of information that's going to be beneficial to us, to the people of the Most High. So, welcome, welcome, welcome to all of the new and returning viewers and listeners. Thank you for being with me tonight. So, we are talking about some interesting things. And as I said, I believe that you will be blessed by what we're talking about. It's preparation actually for this series that we're talking about. So, tonight we're going to be talking about from barbarian to chosen, the truth about Japheth or Japheth. From barbarian to chosen. How did we get there? I mean, it's a totally different narrative, and you're going to see as I go through this that there may have been another okey doke going on. But we know that Noah had three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and these men repopulated the earth after the flood. Shem is considered to be the father of the Israelites, but he had other sons. And folks often overlook that fact. According to Europeans, Ham is the father of the black races. Interestingly, they overlook the fact that he was also the father of the Egyptians. They claim Egypt, but they don't call themselves Hamites. Now, how is that possible? Europeans say they are Egyptians, but they don't claim to be children of Ham. Interesting, right? So, finally, we have Japheth, and he's regarded as the father of the Indo-European nations. Now, this would be all the non-melanated folks. So we're going to ask the question, how did the children of Japheth go from being perceived as barbarians to being regarded as the chosen? And you'll see why I asked that question in a few minutes. But let's look at this map. And this isn't one of the older maps. I just wanted to use this one as an example of what is commonly believed about the migration pattern after the flood. And here you'll see that it shows that the children of Japheth, they spread out from Asia Minor to the Greek islands. And you see Kittim and Javan on the Mediterranean, what they call the Great Sea. And the other sons migrated into the mountainous areas. They moved into colder climates. And supposedly, that's how they lost their melanin. Supposedly. So Japheth is supposed to be the father of those European races, even though we know and science has proven the original people were melanated. When you consider the climate in Cyprus and Greece, was it really the temperature that caused them to lose their hue? Just think about that for a second. When you think about the temperature there, why would the temperature there cause them to lose their melanin? That's a question no one is asking. Now, interestingly, when you read the Old Testament, you will see that the children of Japheth had very little contact with the Israelites. The stories are mainly about the children of Shem and the children of Ham. So, why is no one asking what happened to the lineage of Japheth? Inquiring minds want to know. So, in this next lesson, we're going to be looking at the alliance between the descendants of Esau and Japheth. They seem to have a lot in common. And it's too much to cover in this session, but we will certainly get there. So I want us to look at a summarized version of the wording in Genesis 10 regarding the sons of Noah. So the 10th chapter of Genesis is called the Table of Nations. When you read it, you will see that the wording used for Japheth is different from what is said regarding the other two sons. And I've covered this before, but there may be some who have not heard it. But when you read Genesis 10:5, it says, "By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands." So it's talking about Japheth and his descendants. By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families, in their nations. Now you see we have nations here as H1471, and it's also using the same for Gentiles. So the Strong's Concordance is basically saying Gentiles is the same as nations. When you see Gentiles in Scripture, you should equate it with the word nations. All right, that's the argument. Now, Genesis 10:20 says, "These are the sons of Ham, after their families, after their tongues, in their countries, and in their nations." And then Genesis 10:31, "These are the sons of Shem, after their families, after their tongues, in their lands, after their nations." So I'm pointing this out because it says Isles of the Gentiles, and it uses that in reference to the descendants of Japheth. I'm saying this because this is where we would apply the law of first mention. Some of you have heard me mention that before. According to theologians and scholars, the first time a word is used in Scripture, it holds foundational truth and it sets a precedent for understanding the original definition of the word. Now, when I first studying the Bible years and years and years ago, it was accepted that Gentiles were barbarians, pagans, and heathens. A better understanding is those who do not know or worship the Most High. So religious leaders now say it simply means the nations. And in our more modern time, we're talking about Eurocentric and Western mindsets. The problem is when these words are translated out of the original language, it can change the meaning. So I want to point out that this word is only used in reference to Japheth here. For Shem and Ham, it only said these are the sons of, and then it lists their descendants. And I need to cover this because as we dig deeper into the study, you will see that in many ways, Scripture is being interpreted based on societal changes. Societal changes. Let me show you an example of what I mean by that. This comes from New World Encyclopedia. And they are basically saying a Gentile is a non Israelite. But listen to the last sentence. The term has also been used by Christians to signify non Christians who are not Jews, a rough equivalent of the word infidel. The term has also been used by Christians to signify non-Christians. So let's just pause there for a while. If you're not of Israel and you're not a Christian, then you are a Gentile or an infidel. Is that how it was translated initially? Notice that it also says, this word Gentile originated as an anglicized version of the Latin gentilis, meaning belonging to a certain clan or tribe. So it was an anglicized version of the Latin word gentilis. To anglicize means to make or become English in sound, appearance, or character. And this is the point of all of this that I'm covering tonight. When they translated the scriptures out of the original language, they didn't have a Greek or a Latin word for some of the Hebrew words and vice versa. So they tried to come up with the next best thing. And in some cases, insertions were made that had nothing to do with the original language. For example, Easter. That word shouldn't be there. It was inserted to give validity to a holiday that was important to the Romans. We also see that names were changed to reflect European names. Not only that, the theologians began adding their commentary. And I'm really going to hone in on this. This is the most important part that I want to focus on right now. The commentary of the religious leaders of the day, the theologians, is not inspired by the word that proceedeth out of the mouth of the Most High. Make sure you understand that. Their commentary was not inspired. So religious leaders told us what the text meant. And that's how we ended up with the curse of Ham narrative. They told us that a mark was placed on Cain, and the mark was black skin. This was their commentary. Well, what was it based on? Societal norms, societal changes. It promoted white supremacy. Hopefully, you're understanding what I'm saying here. So, what was inspired then? The words that were actually spoken by the Father. And as we're discussing this, I'm hoping that you're understanding that they inserted some of their words. So it may not have the interpretation, the correct translation that the Father intended. And of course, we know that we lost our language. So pluses and minuses here. If it had been retained in our original language, because we were scattered all around the world, would we be able to read it? Would we understand what it was saying? So, several things to look at and to consider as we go through this. But the interpretations presented to us by Europeans, a lot of it was based on their own commentary, their own translations, based on their own prejudice. Because we now see that they created a narrative about us that wasn't true. And they made themselves into a race of glorious people, They translated a lot of things about themselves that is not true. And we're going to see some of that as we go along. So let's look at some excerpts to give you an idea of what I'm talking about here. This article is entitled, Who is Japheth in the Bible? Who is Japheth? Let's see what's being said about Japheth. It says prophecies involving Japheth. You'll find that the prophecies involving Japheth aren't only pivotal to the understanding his lineage's historical to the I'm sorry, let me go back. It says you'll find that the prophecies involving Japheth aren't only pivotal to understanding his lineage's historical trajectory, but also deeply intertwined with the broader biblical narrative. It says the blessing of enlargement bestowed upon Japheth's descendants signifies a prophetic expansion that has implications far beyond mere territorial growth. Their allegiance with Shem, moreover, encapsulates a complex layer of familial and geopolitical relations, hinting at a unified destiny among diverse peoples. Now, they said a whole lot there. They're saying they're making claims about Japheth in this article, and you're going to see that it ties into the ideology that they created about themselves as the beautiful people, the intelligent people, the special people. So let's go on. It says Japheth's descendants expansion. It says the biblical narrative foretells that Japheth's descendants would spread out extensively, playing a pivotal role in the expansion and shaping of ancient civilizations. This prophecy underscores an era marked by cultural diversity and significant maritime explorations. You see what's missing there, right? You already know what's missing. So they're not going to call themselves colonizers. This was significant maritime explorations. And the way this is being worded is that it was the blessing that came to Japheth. So I'm hoping that you caught that. So they're basically saying colonization is now sanctioned by Scripture. And this is what I mean when I say we have to go back and question things these folks say. Sad but true. So listen to what else it says. Through their seafaring ventures. It was a venture, not colonization. Japheth's lineage is depicted as instrumental in fostering exchanges between diverse cultures. Is that what we had? A diverse exchange. And this diverse exchange obviously benefited us because it says, thereby enriching the tapestry of human civilization with a multitude of languages, traditions, and innovations. What else does it say? So the Most High blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply. I wanted to share this from Genesis 9, 1 through 2. And I'm sharing this in direct opposition to what we just read. The Most High blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Did he just say that to Japheth? Did the blessing just come to Japheth? So Yah blessed Noah and his sons, all three, and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be on every beast of the earth, on every bird of the air, on all that move on the earth, and all the fish of the sea. They are given into your hand. But apparently, Japheth has claimed this blessing for himself. Let's go on. All right. Blessing of enlargement. Within biblical prophecy, Japheth's blessing of enlargement stands as a pivotal movement. So we talked about how this prophecy they're referring to is supposed to be deeply rooted in the narrative of Noah. And it not only forecasts the physical growth of territories, but also encapsulates the cultural significance and spiritual implications of Japheth. Here's the question: what about Shem and Ham? Who really got the blessing? Was it Shem or was it Japheth? And really, in a way, it's kind of sad how Europeans make everything about them. It says, analyzing this blessing, you'll find it's not merely about land acquisition, it's a complex emblem of divine favor. What about Shem? Because we already know the one cursed was Canaan. It wasn't the other sons of Ham. So what about Shem and Ham? They didn't receive this divine favor? Listen, this is a complex emblem of divine favor highlighting how Japheth's progeny would play a crucial role in shaping the cultural and spiritual landscape of their time. Now, how is that possible when they are barely mentioned in the Old Testament? Barely mentioned. It says, the enlargement blessing, therefore, goes beyond geographical bounds, touching upon the essence of cultural identity and spiritual heritage. I thought that was given to Shem. Anyway, spiritual heritage marking Japheth's descendants as key contributors to the tapestry of human civilization. Just forget about Ham and Shem. They really played no part. They didn't have a part to play. Now, let's look at the supposed alliance with Shem. It says, in exploring the prophecies involving Japheth, his alliance with Shem emerges as a critical element, signifying not only a union of families, but also a convergence of destinies that would profoundly impact the course of biblical history. Again, how is this possible when they were rarely mentioned? Did this really happen? I mean, I'm trying to figure it out. So it says this partnership illustrates strategic alliance, how Japheth's descendants would, listen, Japheth's descendants would benefit from aligning with Shem's lineage. Who's benefiting here? The descendants of Japheth would benefit. And it says, they benefit from aligning with Shem's lineage, leveraging mutual strengths. They benefit from Shem's wisdom, the profound influence of Shem's insight and spiritual leadership on Japheth's people, guiding their collective future. They benefit from cultural exchange, an interchange of ideas and traditions between the families, fostering growth and understanding. But where were they? It's also a prophetic fulfillment, the unfolding of divine plans through their collaboration, showcasing the intricate weaving of their paths by providence. Now, family. Family. Why then do we have the descendants of Japheth in that statue from the dream that Nebuchadnezzar saw? Greece. Why do we see them there? Why do we see Rome there? What are they doing there? What collaboration? Did this happen? Did this happen? Let's go on and look at the legacy of Japheth. So it goes on to say Japheth's legacy, as depicted in biblical texts, significantly influenced the ethnographic and cultural narratives of various Eurasian peoples. This legacy, rooted in Japheth's virtues and cultural contributions. How do we know what his virtues and cultural contributions were if he was rarely mentioned in scripture? And when we see him show up, he's enslaving the descendants of Shem. How does that work? So it says, this legacy has been a subject of scholarly interest and analysis. So the act that we can refer to, of course, is Shem and Japheth covering their father. That was a virtuous act. But it was Shem and Japheth covering their father. What other virtues and cultural contributions can we point to? Maybe you all can put it in the chat. I may be missing some. Let's look at these virtues. His virtues. The biblical narrative attributes to Japheth a character of expansiveness and inclusivity. Stop. Stop. His virtues, such as openness and the willingness to embrace others. Come on. With a whip and chains? His virtues, such as openness and the willingness to embrace others, are seen as foundational principles that shaped the interactions among the diverse peoples purportedly descended from him. All right. His cultural contributions. Japheth's descendants are credited with the spread of various cultural practices across Eurasia. These include linguistic developments, architectural innovations. Didn't they steal that from Egypt? And the dissemination of agricultural techniques, all of which have left a lasting imprint on the civilizations that emerged in these regions. Come on, family. What did we really find in the Caucasus Mountain that would lead us to believe there were architectural innovations? So, the genealogies presented in the Bible have been interpreted to suggest that Japheth is the progenitor of many Indo-European peoples, and we need to keep that in mind. We're going to touch on that. This connection has been pivotal in tracing the diffusion of cultures and languages across vast areas, providing insights into the historical movements and interactions of populations. There is also scholarly interest. The legacy of Japheth has been a focal point for researchers aiming to understand the biblical worldview and its influence on subsequent historical and cultural developments. This interest underscores the importance of biblical narratives in shaping our understanding of the past. So it says, in essence, Japheth's legacy is a complex tapestry of virtues, cultural contributions, and ethnographic significance that has fascinated scholars and laypersons alike, offering a window into the ancient world and its enduring influence on Eurasian civilizations. I hope you all are putting those accomplishments in the chat so that I can check them out later. Because Japheth did all these things. He's presented as the model of virtue, but yet his descendants are listed among the nations in the statue that Nebuchadnezzar saw. How is it that we see the descendants of Japheth stealing and pillaging around the world? The prophecy also said he would dwell in the tents of Shem. He would dwell in the tents of Shem. So we now see Japheth in his own tent. He's in Shem's tent, and he's in Ham's tent. He's in everybody's tent. And let's just ask this question. Where exactly is Shem's tent? Where is that tent? If we use the history made up by the Europeans, the tents of Ham can be found in Africa. We find Japheth there as a colonizer. Why is he there? Now, according to this history, where then can we find Shem? If we're talking about those who say they are us, is that the only place where we should see Japheth dwelling in the tents of Shem? Something's wrong with this picture. Where exactly is Shem's tent? You all tell me, because I may have missed it. I may have missed it. Tell me where Shem's tent is, because that's where Japheth should be dwelling. Are we talking about the strip of land over there? Is that the tent where he should be dwelling? Just trying to figure this out. All right, let's go on. So now it says Japheth's influence on modern interpretations. While considering the lasting impact of biblical figures on contemporary thought, it's essential to evaluate how Japheth's narrative, please don't miss this, evaluate how Japheth's narrative has been reinterpreted through modern lenses. That's key right there. I hope you caught that. His story has been reinterpreted. That's what happened. We now have the westernized, Eurocentric version of the story. This is called white supremacy carrying a cross and a Bible. That's what that's called. So, the narrative has been reinterpreted through modern lenses, influencing our understanding of cultural and ethnic origins. It says you'll find that Japheth's ethics often overlooked or is often overlooked in casual readings. His ethics is overlooked. It says it offers a profound insight into the dynamics of familial respect and unity, themes that are increasingly relevant in today's globalized society. Modern parallels drawn from Japheth's story illuminate the foundational principles. Listen, y'all, don't fall out of your chair on this one. The foundational principles of tolerance and cooperation among diverse peoples. Are we talking about Europeans? Really? Historically, interpretations of Japheth's lineage have been used to justify the expansion of territories and cultures, underpinning the idea that diversity and expansion are divinely sanctioned. It's divinely sanctioned. That's what we're going to call colonization. This reinterpretation invites a nuanced understanding of how ancient narratives can shape our modern ethos towards inclusivity and peace. So that's why I say the danger is when they add their commentary to scripture. And that's what they have been feeding us, their interpretations, their commentaries about what the scripture is saying. They told us who we were. They told us. They told everybody else who they were. Because, of course, it's divinely orchestrated that Japheth would have this blessing. I mean, I thought it was supposed to be Shem doing this, but maybe we missed it on that one. So the journal concludes with this. In conclusion, Japheth's narrative in the Bible intricately weaves through ancient prophecies and familial, this word, bonds, leaving a legacy that scholars and theologians continue to unravel. His descendants' settlement patterns and interactions with Noah's other sons hint at a broader yet enigmatic influence on historical and cultural developments. As you delve deeper into the complexities of Japheth's lineage and the cryptic prophecies, I guess the cryptic part was that Japheth would enslave the descendants of Ham and Shem. It's a cryptic prophecy. So the full significance of his role in biblical history may still be cloaked in mystery, and it's awaiting further scholarly exploration. It's cloaked in mystery, you all. Now, how is it they keep skipping over the destruction that is to come to the legs of iron and feet made of iron and clay? Aren't they Japheth's descendants? And this is why we have to verify what has been presented as history and biblical truth. Some of these folks just make stuff up. Let's look at a recent example of how they do this. Time to address the elephant in the room. SciTech Daily says a 20-year study reveals Neanderthals were as intelligent as Homo sapiens. Here's why. Don't miss this, family. Neanderthals knew how to control fire and used it to cook food. Yep, that's it. That's it. So again, the elephant in the room. If the original inhabitants, the original descendants of Japheth were melanated people, what happened to cause all of his so-called descendants to now have a different hue? Put it in the chat if you know, because you may know the answer. What happened to the original people? I mean, we're looking at the descendants of Japheth right now, and can you really point to melanated folks out there? If so, tell me where they are. Tell me where they are. So what happened to the narrative just a few decades ago that Neanderthals were subhuman, little more than animals, barbarians? So do you see how they rewrote the script when they found out that Neanderthals are their distant relatives. You all knew this was coming, didn't you? Surely you knew this was coming. The marketing campaign began when they found out this is them. So they were intelligent because they could control fire and cook food. You can't make this up, family. You can't make this up. And then NBCnews.com reported that a 50,000-year-old piece of string hints at Neanderthal intelligence, scientists say. Let me read some of this so that we can understand what this is about. It says, what may be the world's oldest piece of string made by Neanderthal humans from bark about 50,000 years ago has been unearthed in a rock shelter in France. It's a tiny fragment, just over 2/10 of an inch long, but its discoverers say it shows Neanderthals had extensive knowledge of the trees it was made from and enough practical ability to make a string that would hold fast under tension. Now, you know. I'm going to be on my best behavior tonight. No apologies for the lying for all these years telling us that our people had no intellect. No apologies for counting enslaved people as 3/5 of a person. But now you get the golden prize for tying a string. Yeah. You can't make this up. You can't make it up. So let's read this. It says, this is from the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia, talking about Japheth. This name in Genesis 9:27 seems to be explained by the phrase, may Yah make wide Japheth, or enlarge Japheth. And it's represented as the root word patah, or make wide. This etymology, however, is not universally accepted, as the wordplay is so obvious and the association of Japheth with Shem, listen, the association of Japheth with Shem, which means dark. You see that, right? The association of Shem with Shem, which means dark, or Shem was dark, and Ham, who was black, suggests a name on similar lines, either gentilic or descriptive of race. Japheth has therefore been explained as meaning fair. So the non-Sem and non-Hamitic race is known to the Israelites being all more or less white-skinned. So somehow their skin turned a different hue. But nobody's asking how. If the original inhabitants, that their science, their own science says they were all dark melanated people. If they came out of Africa, what did the first people look like? If you go and look at the Garden of Eden where it was, does it not name Ethiopia? Now, it lists an actual place. And where would we find Ethiopia? In the Caucasus Mountains, apparently. Oh, you all? I wanted you to see how this is happening right before our eyes. They just change things as they go. Almost like that word anti, you know what? I mean, it can change on a dime. One day it means this, the other day it means this. This month it means this. Next year it'll mean something else. It's whatever they say it is. That's pretty much how this works. So why wouldn't we go back through these scriptures and challenge the lies? Why wouldn't we do that? Let's go on. It says, widespreading. So the Most High shall enlarge Japheth, enlarge him. So some, however, derive the name from Yapah or Yaphah to mean beautiful. Just make it up. Hey, his name means beautiful. And since his name means beautiful, that means he's white. Because he's white, that means he's beautiful. Family. Are you seeing this? So should we trust these commentators, commentaries? No, you go back and verify everything based on scripture. Because these people, these religious theologians, scholars, etc., these people are proven liars. Not all, but a good portion of them. A good portion. It's like, how do you just make this stuff up? Oh, well, hey, because he's white, that means he's beautiful. And you hear that being said. The Japhites are the beautiful people. I wanted you to see all this because I'm going somewhere with this, you all. Let's look at this one. Dwelling in Shem's tents. Japheth would share or own. Now it's not sharing. He would own the spiritual blessings and religious privileges associated with Shem's lineage. He would own it. While Shem's descendants, such as the Israelites, initially held these blessings, they were eventually carried by Israelite missionaries like Paul to the Roman world, becoming part of the Aryan race's spiritual heritage. I hope you're seeing this. So thus, Japheth, metaphorically, dwells in the tents of Shem, signifying the spread of Shem's religious legacy to Japheth's descendants. They just make it up. It does not matter if they can prove it. But these lies were used to create a replacement doctrine, making the children of Japheth the kings and priests. I hope you heard me. They used our books to twist things so that it would be in their favor and then erase the people, the true people. So let's look at this. He shall dwell in the tents of Shem. In one sense, Shem now dwells in the tents of Japheth. Don't miss this. For the Israelites, the noblest representatives of Shem dwell dispersed where? In Aryan countries. I wonder how they got there. And except in the Arabian Peninsula. Once Cushite, the Shemites, listen, have no home of their own. So then, what happened to Shem's tent? That takes me back to the question I asked earlier. Where is Shem? Well, they just told you. They have no home of their own because they stole it. They took it. It says, but the religious privileges of their race, listen, now belong to the family of Japheth. Did you catch the replacement theology there? I hope you caught that. It belongs to the family of Japheth because it was carried to them like people like Paul throughout the Roman world. They have become the property of the leading members of the Aryan race. And thus Japheth takes possession of the tents which by right, you all belong to Shem. Listen to what they say. For to dwell in the tents of Shem is not so much to share them as to own them. So they lost their tent. Do you see the replacement theology there? I hope you see it. They've taken it all. I mean, like really, what's left? What is left? So, we're going to read some excerpts from this journal article entitled From Barbarian Other to Chosen People. The etymology, ideology, and evolution of nation at the shifting edge of medieval Western Christendom. Yeah, we're going to cover quite a bit in this. So medieval scholars have demonstrated that the term gens, plural gentes, largely identical in usage to the modern term nation, was in use by the end of the first millennium. This article seeks to explain how and when nation came to replace gens in medieval Europe. Because remember, they changed the word Gentile. It now means nation. That's all it is what they're saying. All of the negative connotations that were associated to it previously, oh, no, throw all that stuff away. We don't need those terms, those definitions anymore. It's just nations of people. So it says the emergence of the concept of nationhood in Central and Eastern Europe must also be understood as a process of othering and resistance to othering, whereby emerging states seek to affirm their status as civilized Christian states, the political, social, and cultural equals of the older states that had risen out of the Roman Empire. So we're going to dig into this, some interesting things in here. It says, in the heart of the Roman Empire, Augustus built a long-lost portico dedicated to the nations of the world. Though the use of the term nation would not become widespread for many centuries as the Romans referred to people as gentes, the existence of such a portico as described in classical Roman sources highlights an ethnic understanding of the world, one where dress and language typify ethnic and national differences. So, let's make sure we understand what they mean. This is from Merriam. Gens. It's a Roman clan embracing the families of the same stock in the male line, with the members having a common name and worshiping a common ancestor. They needed to have a common name and they need to worship a common ancestor. All right. Now, let's look at Hellenist. Hellenist, a person living in Hellenistic times who was Greek in language, outlook, and way of life, but was not Greek in ancestry, as in Hellenized Jew. Most of you are familiar with that term. So I want to make sure we understand what they mean when they use these terms, because we need to think about something here. For the Hellenist Israelites, they began worshiping the pagan gods and stopped keeping the laws, statutes, and commandments. But did it erase their bloodline? Did it erase their bloodline? It couldn't erase their bloodline. They were still Israelites, even though they were called, quote unquote, Hellenized Jews. So let's read this again. A Hellenist, a person living in Hellenistic times who was Greek in language, so they were speaking the language. They understood the outlook or the way, the customs, and way of life, but was not Greek in ancestry. These people were Hellenized. So we have to make sure we understand how these terms were used as we continue digging into this and see what happened when the Romans took control of our books. We need to understand these words because oftentimes there are some who say whenever you see Gentile in the New Testament, oh, they're talking about the Hellenized Jews. They're talking about Israelites. No, not in every case. Not every time. So we have to understand how these terms were used. Gens, it says, gentes, a group of families in ancient Rome who shared a name and claimed a common origin. A common origin. I hope you're getting this. Again, we need to understand these terms because I want you to see how they did what they did. The Roman Catholic Church brought all of the European nations, all of these supposed Japhetic people, under the banner of Christian. Everyone else then became a savage, a pagan, to include the Israelites. It's a switcheroo. Those who were not of European Christians, or they were not a European Christian, could go into perpetual slavery, even if they converted to Christianity. Again, I need you to see how they did it and what they did. So this is why our ancestors continue to be enslaved and treated like animals, even though they became Christians. Now, let's also remember the so-called children of just and righteous and virtuous Japheth did that. But let's keep going. So let's go back to the journal article. Othering. What do they mean by othering? And they're talking about the others, like there's us, European Christians, and then there are the others. So they actually went to wars to fight against those other Japhetic races to force them under this banner, to come under this banner. Then they went after us and everybody else. So othering. The concept of the nation is intimately tied to the process of othering. By defining nations, the universal is set aside to divide populations into distinct groups. So this John Francois writes, otherness is the result of a discursive process by which a dominant in-group, meaning us, meaning the Roman Catholic Church, constructs one or many dominated out groups, them, which would have been us, the Israelites and Hamites, by stigmatizing a difference, real or imagined. What was the difference, family? color of the skin. The color of the skin. So the theologians, the religious leaders had to go back and use our scriptures. Oh, a mark was placed on Cain, even though there's nowhere in scripture that says the mark was black skin. Well, it was black skin. That was the mark. And they started promoting it. Their marketing campaign is out of this world, by the way. They started promoting it. The curse of Ham. Oh, Ham was cursed. And since we're going to call him the father of the black races, all black people are cursed. Now, mind you, Egypt was a son of Ham, but not the Egyptians. Oh, no, 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 because they need to own or claim Egypt. So, othering. The process of creating this otherness is not limited to modern populations. So Claude Levi-Strauss highlights that the idea that we share a common humanity is a recent historical phenomenon. The other one, you all, that's coming out is, well, it's not based on color. We need to just love everybody. After they did all this based on color. So they say, humanity is confined to the borders of the tribe, the linguistic group, or even in some instances to the village, so that many so-called primitive peoples describe themselves as the men, or sometimes, though hardly more discreetly, as the good, the excellent, the well-achieved. Who are we talking about here? Thus implying that the other tribes, groups, or villages have no part in the human virtues or even human nature, but that their members are at best bad, wicked, ground monkeys. What did we hear? Savages, uncivilized, not fully human. Again, I need you to see what they did and how they did it. Let's keep going. The history of a word. It says, in the study of nationhood, one of the contentious issues has been dating the origin and spread of the idea of nation and nationhood. One prominent theorist, Eric Hobsbawm, affirms that nation is a recent construct that assumed its contemporary meaning in modern times. So that lets you know what we read in Genesis 10:5 was not talking about nations. It's a modern construct. It says, we shall argue that Hobsbawm's contention that the term nation is a novelty is mistaken. Using medieval Latin chronicles and texts, we will demonstrate that the term nation made its first appearance in early medieval times and was first used, listen, to distinguish a Christian us and a barbarian pagan. Now you see where the word comes from. You all. As I mentioned, the Roman Catholic Church needed to bring all of the European nations under the banner of Christian. Everyone else was then a savage or a pagan, to include the Israelites, whereas before, the original definition for Gentiles meant them. Are you seeing this? They didn't want to be Gentiles, so they created a term that would exclude Shem and Ham. And it's true because they say so. Because they say so. Again, I'm going to be on my best behavior tonight. So it says the Vulgate Bible prefers the terms gens and gentis as it was compiled in the end of the fourth century, at which time the other was still the gentis and the term nation was used only for the most distant and the most barbarian of peoples. Who you think they're talking about? Native Americans and Africans? Talking about y'all. Yeah, that's who they're talking about. For these reasons, we would argue that the Latin Vulgate Bible should be understood as belonging to an earlier period, and that over time, nations would supersede gentis, first as a term used to signify the pagan and barbarian other, and later to mean all peoples. So you're either us or you're an other, us or them. That's it. No in between. No in between. Let's go on. It says English exceptionalism can be traced back to the writings of William Holler's work. And it's referencing, or this, it says J.C. Clark hearkens to this in asking, what then created the difference? In examining what is presented with a precocious sense of English nationhood, citing the work of Sarah Foote, this latter author does provide a thorough analysis of the emergence of a gens. In the 9th century, she writes, Alfred was thus manipulating the history of the Anglo-Saxon people to create among his own subjects a sense of cultural and spiritual identity by invoking a concept of Englishness, particularly dependent on the Christian faith. They were manipulating the history of the Anglo-Saxon people to create a cultural and spiritual identity. And what was the anchor? The Christian faith. That's why the KKK can be Christians. I hope you all are getting this. That's why they can be Christians. Yeah, these people. So here's what you need to understand. That was the goal for creating the new religion. They wanted their own. They didn't want to submit themselves to the early apostles and disciples who were Israelites. They wanted their own. So it says a similar dichotomy is found in Hebrew, where Am was used to refer to a people of Yah, tied together by a common set of laws and heirs to the covenant. Here's the difference. We also had a bloodline. With them, they're saying you don't have to be. You just have to worship the same deity now and obey the same laws. So let me read this again. A similar dichotomy is found in Hebrew, where Am was used to refer to a people of Yah tied together by a common set of laws and heirs to the covenant. This Am would correspond to the Roman populace, as we will discuss in the following paragraphs. The other in Hebrew is the Goyim, a term comparable to the Greek ethne and the Latin gentis. Like the ethne and the gentis, and eventually the nations, membership in the Goyim is defined through descent and shared ancestry. However, the Am for some prophets is open to all who accept the covenant. These distinctions are important as the religious texts of the Am of Israel would be translated into Greek and Latin and eventually vernaculars, and thus providing a model for future religions. Here's what I need you to get. They created it based on our books. They just twisted some things that would fit them. And now you can understand why we still have segregated Sundays in some churches. They had to make Christianity their own, which is why the Catholic Church began implementing changes. Don't keep the law. Worship on Sunday. Don't keep the feast days. You need to celebrate the Roman religious days. Is it making sense to you? This is what they did. It says to fully understand the origins of the term nation and ideas of nationhood, it is necessary to examine language and ethnicity in the Roman Empire. The term nation is derived from Latin, and I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this correctly, natio or natio, I'm assuming, stemming from the proper name, listen, Natio, the Roman goddess of birth. I mean, there's a goddess or god or something, pagan deity for almost everything. That's where this word stems from, this Roman goddess of birth. The common noun was used in Latin to refer to birth or being born, and came to be used to refer to a breed, stock, kind, species, or race. It could also be used in a derogatory sense to refer to a tribe or race of people. So it says the Romans distinguished between civilized us, the populace, and a barbarian other, the gentes, located beyond the garrisons posted at the frontiers of the Roman Empire. So this is when they went after the other supposed descendants of Japheth and forced them, or tried. Well, the Roman Catholic Church definitely did a good job. They forced people to convert. It was like, convert or die. There's no in between. There's no in between. Again, they had to make Christianity their own. It says, as Geary writes, the ethnogenesis of the Roman people, as enshrined in works of Virgil and Livy, created a populace out of desperate gentes. The populace was defined not solely by common descent, but also by, listen, a shared history and a body of individuals living under the same law. Now, here's the question. Why would the descendants of Japheth need to create a history? The son of Noah, why would they need to create a history? Just think about that. So it says the populus Romanus was an entity founded on constitutional law, a shared cultural tradition, and not bloodlines. And in theory, membership in the populace was open to all. In time, the populace would be used to identify a populus Christianus and a populus Dei. And by the end of the first millennium, some of the rising kings of Europe would see their peoples, listen, as the chosen or as a chosen people in line with populous Israel. The term gentes was thus applied to those people that lived beyond the walls and the laws of the Roman Empire. So they had to come on after our people. They had no choice because they needed to make it their own. They had to come up with a new covenant. I hope you're getting this. So it didn't matter if they were related to each other, as long as they shared the same history and lived under the same law. It was not about bloodline for them. It's the same with the Ish people. So, based on what we just read, what I'm saying to you is they had to try to get rid of the true bloodline. They had to, because they wanted to own the message. They needed to own everything that belonged to us. Let's keep going. It says the rise of the gentes occurs when the barbarians were no longer being assimilated into the Roman populace, instead maintaining their separate identities and acquiring their own history. With the rise of Christianity and the conversion of the pagan gentes, a new form of othering occurs. The division is no longer between the populace of the Roman Empire and the barbarian gentes, but rather between the Christian gentes and the pagan other. So because our people were not Christians when they went into Africa, because they were not Christians, according to them, they had a right to enslave them. That's what they did to the Native Americans. Same thing. Their time of exploration. That's what they were doing. If you were not a European Christian, then our laws say we can enslave you and put you in perpetual slavery. Now, let's go back to the fact, are we really talking about the descendants of just, righteous Japheth? Who are we really talking about here? So, Christianity was used to civilize the European clans. They provided the barbarians with a history. And again, why would the descendants of Japheth need to be given a history? What was wrong with the one they had? What was wrong with the one they had? So it says the spread of Christianity requires an ideological shift in the Jewish understanding of the us and the other to allow for the conversion of the Gentiles, a word incidentally derived from the Latin gentes, and the creation of a Christian am. They're now the chosen people that would break with Jewish law. Let's keep going. With the rising preeminence, especially military and political, of the barbarian gentes, a formerly pejorative term became co-opted by the gentes themselves and elevated to a status equal to that of the populus Romanus. As Peter Brown notes, the term gentes was applied in the post-imperial Roman lands to name those armies led by a king. Though one ethnic group would predominate in those armies, they would nonetheless integrate soldiers from various ethnic groups, including Romans. Listen, the historian Jordanes provided the barbarians with a history. Again, they needed to give them a history. Gary writes that the distinctions between them and us were disappearing. Later, he notes that once the Franks, Lombards, and others had become the newly Christianized and to an extent Romanized us, one had to look eastwards to find the new barbarians. Who did they start looking for? Why do you think it's called Roman Catholic Church? So they started looking for others like the Slavs, The others who didn't, who lived in the outskirts, still in those Caucasus Mountains, etc. But it says, we will argue that a linguistic shift occurs whereby the term nation comes into preeminence to qualify those gentes that have not been converted to Christianity and have yet to be integrated into the cultural norms of the Western nations. It was no longer ours. It was now theirs. They brought together the Indo-European clans and created a narrative for their history. Like I said in the last session, when you trace the history of the Romans, you run into all sorts of dead ends. Why? Why, if they are descendants from Japheth? Let's go on. So Jordanes, a Roman bureaucrat writing in the 6th century, who is best known for his history of the Goths in Gaetica, marks the transition from classical Roman Latin and ideals to the formation of early medieval society. By this period, the Latin language is being transformed, and Charles Miro categorizes his writing style as irregular, rambling, uneven, and exhibits to a marked degree the traits of the decadent, crumbling later Latin. Jordanes is thought to have been a descendant of the Goths, assimilated into the crumbling Latin and a convert to Christianity. His life and writings are significant in that they mark the incorporation of the other, the barbarians that invaded the Roman Empire, into the us of early Christendom. Even as a modus vivendi had to be reached, allying the old Roman elite with the new military forces that were dividing the Roman Empire, the them had to become us. So Brown notes, this in turn meant that the Barbari, the stereotypical outsiders of the Roman imperial imagination, had to be allowed to become in some way or other insiders. This was not an easy task, even though many of the Barbari had served as imperial Roman soldiers and actively sought to be like the Romans. They were still depicted as total aliens who had arrived from nowhere. Gaelic landowners still describe the Visigoths and the Burgundians as men in unkept clothes, with furs piled high upon their shoulders. Talking about the cavemen, wild men who did not wear Roman silks or the trappings of Roman civilization, even though little would have distinguished these men from Roman soldiers. The description of the landowners highlights the continued need for the othering of the Barbary. So they knew that they were, before they created this new history, they were considered barbarians. They knew this. But they needed a new word. It's just the nations now. We're just talking about nations. It says this transition is evident in the very vocabulary used in Jordanes' writing. In the 6th century, he uses gens for Romans and Goths alike, and natio as a generic term. He also introduces changes in the meanings of words. They introduce changes like civitas for herbs, cities, suburbs, and the term Germanus, now synonymous with the older frater or brother. Here again, we find in Jordanes' language a transformation, a domestication of the wild other from a former German barbarian to a now German brother. So these Indo-Europeans who had been fighting and killing off each other found a way to come together. The umbrella that they came together under was Christianity. This is what they said made them civilized. Everybody else became uncivilized pagans and savages. They switched places. It says the Goths at this point acquired history and fame. The distinction between a civilized us and a barbarian other did not disappear. Rather, as mentioned previously, it was displaced, both geographically and linguistically, as the former barbarians adopted the laws and the faith of the Roman populace. They in turn sought new words to distinguish the Christian peoples of the West from the barbarian and pagan other. It is at this time that the term nation appears in medieval texts. I hope you got that. At first, the term nation was merely a qualifier, a term used to describe a particular type of gens, a population located outside of Christendom, both in terms of faith and culture. I know this is a lot, family. I'm loading you all up, but you really need to get this because it will be difficult to understand what happened with what happened when they took control of our books and took control of the message if you don't understand this part. This is important. They knew who they were. They transformed themselves into something else. Let's go on. All right, so it says the conversion of the barbarians and the forging of common genealogies facilitated the blurring of the line between the us and them. By the 6th century, the Franks, listen, were claiming to be the descendants of the Trojans. As I said, they just make things up. Yeah. We're the Trojans. We came from the Trojans. Yeah, we're the Israelites. I'm going to be on my best behavior. Within a few generations, the Franks had been themselves integrated into the local Roman population. Even the language reflected this merging of a Roman population and one of the barbarian gens. The French language is a Romance language with a Latin substratum, but roughly 1/10 of the French vocabulary is of Germanic Frankish. In Italia, a similar process was underway as the Lombards were quickly assimilated into the local Roman population. Family, this is why they said, as long as you are a European Christian, this is why they told the explorers, wherever you go, if you go to that land, and if you don't find other European Christians, take the land. It's yours. This is what they did. So it says, distinct identities remain in both Francia and Italia. The ruling elites claimed descent from the Franks and the Lombards, with Roman law and the law codes of the invaders coexisting. The process was replicated throughout Western Europe. That history looks good. Yeah. The Moors, oh yeah, we want that. Let's just take it and make it our own. They just started making things up. Why would they need to do this if they had a history? These are the Indo-Europeans. They move into a place, slaughter the men, rape the women, and become those people. This is what they did to the children of Japheth, the original people. Let's keep going. So it says, Bede and the Historia Ecclesiastica Gentis Algorium. I have no idea what all that means. One text that illustrates the shift of the gens from that of the pagan or other to a Christian us is the Venerable Bede's. So according to his writing, written in the 8th century, Bede's history uses the term gentis to refer to Christian peoples. He provides not only a cultural and social conception of a gens, but also a political dimension as well. Barbara York writes that a people, to Bede's mind, would not flourish as Christians unless they were controlled by their own king and bishop. They couldn't submit to the early church Israelites. Let me read that again. They would not flourish as Christians unless they were controlled by their own king and bishop. Yeah. Are you getting it, family? Again, I know it's a lot to digest. So they needed their own, but what happened to there's no more Jew or Greek? Let's go on. So Hastings noticed this exceptional use of the term as Bede refers to a united people, this gens. So Hastings would write that the English that he, Bede, has no doubt at all, meaning the Saxons, the Angles, and the Jutes, are now a single nation with a single language and a single church. What church are we talking about, family? What church are we talking about? The Roman Catholic Church. That's who we're talking about. So Bede's use of gens and natio conforms to the norms of the 8th century. On the whole, he uses gentis to refer to Christian nations. Christian nations. And to be a Christian nation during that day, you had to be a European. You had to be a European. Let's go on. So the Carolingian Renaissance, the Franks, who would provide not only a growing political centralization, but would also help to ensure the development of a stable Western Christendom, shaped the development of ideas of nationhood. Under Charlemagne, the Latin language would be standardized, serving as a European lingua franca. Though the Latin language would be central to the culture of Western Europe, the Council of Tours in 813 decreed that homilies, selected sermons would be translated and delivered to the populace. And it goes on to say the language of the rustic Romans, they're delivering this to the populace in this language of the rustic Romans or into German, leading to the development of Old French and Old German. The Franks also sought to ensure that their populace would practice the same faith, Catholicism, and would be governed by Christian laws that had grown out of older, Roman law. I have to read that again. The Franks sought to ensure that their populace would practice the same faith, Catholicism, and would be governed by Christian laws that had grown out of older Roman law. The innovation that would have lasting consequences for the development of nationhood in Europe was an identification of the chosen people of the Old Testament. So, what did they do? The ruling elite would identify themselves and their peoples with the people of Israel. And thus, people of the Franks would be served by a king who would lead the people out to war. The Franks had thus provided a model for political centralization, the promotion of a common religious culture with the use of standardized vernaculars to preach to the masses, and the use of the Bible as an ideological tool to justify the rule of kings and the supremacy of chosen peoples. Family. Mm, mm, mm. Wow. This is what they were doing and why they did it. They were remaking the chosen people. They could not continue with a renewed covenant because you need the original people for that. You need a new covenant for new people. You need a new covenant. And what happened to those who would not submit to the new religion? Well, I think we know what happened, right? We're the examples. We're the examples of what would happen. Mm, mm, mm. In terms of our history of othering, the deeds are noteworthy because they are written in an epoch where the pagan other still existed in Europe. Pagan populations lived en masse, especially in the southern Baltics, and they resisted Christianization. For the Catholic princes of the Poles, the pagan other was found on their borders. The campaigns against these neighboring populations were the central theme of the Gesta. So much so that the reluctance of the heathen neighbors is first talking about their people. They had to force all of them to come under this banner of Christianity. So it says the reluctance of the heathen neighbors to accept the true faith and keep its commands is repeatedly quoted in justification of making war against these people. In this sense, it is quite justified to draw attention to the crusader soul. It says later in the century, these populations would be devastated, subjugated, and forcibly converted to Christianity during the Northern Crusades. Is that not what they did to us and the Native Americans? So Christian crusaders would wage war against the people of the Baltics. This would not end until the final conversion of the Grand Duke of Lithuania in 1387. They forced them to come under that yoke, and then they went for everybody else. Our ancestors. Yes, and I'm sure the Native Americans understand that well. So again, we needed to get that understanding. But here's food for thought. Why was Japheth whited out? Is Japheth living in the land of Ham? And if so, why? If it says he would be in the tents of Shem. And where exactly can we find him in the land of Shem? How about this one? If you think about the statue Nebuchadnezzar saw, why did the seed of Japheth afflict and enslave the children of Israel? What did they do to him? What did they do to him? So are we really talking about the true descendants of Japheth here? Or were they whited out? So this is information we need to know as we continue to go on in this series. They were playing a long game. The system they put in place is crumbling, but look at how long it took to see some cracks. Look at how long it took to see some cracks. There's so much to cover. Oh my word. Some of it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know. We get this a lot of information. I don't know. It's like having to, just go through and find the most relevant. I mean, I think all of it is, but you can't share it all. It's just so much. But I hope that you got something out of this tonight. Um, Again, lots and lots to cover. And I'm going to look at some of your comments. But I wanted to do something first. I wanted to go back to something I shared in the last live session. If you all were on that live, remember I talked about this dream I had when my husband and I were in New Orleans. Some of you may remember that. So I was prompted to go back and look at my journal because I related the story to you from memory, trying to remember what happened. But I was prompted to go back and look at it in my journal. So I went back and found it. I have so many journals. That's the thing. But I mentioned that I saw this entity that was sitting above the waters. And then I mentioned that I saw this homeless man under a bridge. But what I had in my notes was that there were a group of people near the waters, sitting in a circle, about to prepare for some type of satanic worship. So, if you think about everything else I said about what was going on there, that is definitely a stronghold there. Definitely a stronghold there. I didn't even remember that part until I went back to look at my journal. So thankfully, I went back to check. So let's see what some of you all are saying. There's so many comments. You all know that I appreciate your comments. I really, really do. It's just, I know I won't be able to get to all of them. So I'm just going to try to go back and kind of scroll through, try to go back as close to the beginning as possible. How you doing, Brother Charles? He says, Easter has nothing to do with this book as we now all know. Absolutely right on that one. Shalom to all of you, saying shalom and thank you for joining me. Rita, yes, so true. Commentary is what they interpret the scriptures to be. I'm telling you, that's it. That's the summary of what I just talked about. Notorious Hebrew says we are removing beams and planks. And you all, if you have not hit the like button, take a second to go through and do that. Just hit like. Let me see how much. Naya Boanya. Sorry. It says everything that was true about the Bible. I'm thinking you meant erase or change, maybe. Not sure. Let's see. Let's keep going. Queen Mommy. Little do they know that skin is actually a curse by the Most High. Everywhere I find it in scripture, that's what it says, but you won't find one scripture that says black skin is a curse. Not one. Not one. Better herbs did they try to do our job. And how are they faring with that? We need to ask that question. Brother Charles says, how could they interpret what our book means when they are not of the Israelites nor of the priestly tribe of Levi? And that's why I'm like, no. Too many of those religious leaders and theologians have proven themselves to be liars. No, I'm sorry. And as I said, not all of them, but why should we have to go searching for the ones who have been truthful, and telling the truth? So no pass on that. Let's see. Sister Alma says, only because they thought, howbeit wrongly, Shem looks like them. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Council's girl question everything that they say. I'm just trying to tell you. How you doing, Sister Mary C? I hope you all tune into some of her sessions. Mary C, put your channel link in the chat, sis. Let's see. Sister Alma got her. Biblical truths and misconceptions. Shalom, family. Sorry I'm late. Well, you can always catch the rewind, sis. No worries there. And let's see. It says, "Psst, hey, you, they stole both brothers' inheritance and be less them or less than." Not sure there. Bitter herb, shim to a faxed or faxed. Let's see. Just trying to look at some of them. Yep, a mainly white town I'm working at was hit by a tornado. Oh my gosh, I was talking to my daughter about that today. I'm just like, what in the world? And not just here. Where was it where they believe 2,000 people were caught in a mudslide? I'm just like, oh my gosh. Council's girl, yeah, they're definitely making it up. Rita D, if it wasn't for the Most High helping me through the waking up to his truth and realizing the lies I had been told in Christianity, I would have lost my mind. I know that's right. I know that's right. Saul says they stole everything. I'm telling you, everything. Everything. Cultural theft. Cultural theft. Oh my goodness. Let's see. Carrington Smith, the word for enlarge is also deceive, and they truly are deceive. Yes, yes. Let's see. Going through some more of these. Let's see. Japheth ben Dawid says, by the grace of Yahuwah, it missed me when I went back to Tulsa over the weekend. I'm glad you didn't get caught up in that because, man, I'm telling you, it's a lot going on. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I mean, and planes are just having all these mishaps. Like, what in the world? There's a lot going on. We need to be prayed up. Be prayed up. Sister Mary C. embraced others as long as they mirrored themselves. Yes. Yes. Bird Song of Yah. Death, red rum, and destruction. Minister, glad somebody's smoking something strong. Well, it's legal now, so sorry, that magnificent caveman art. I mean, yeah, it's a mark of intelligence. The Yamnaya people be stealing every heritage they come in contact with. I mean, if you do the research on them, that is exactly what they do. They go in, they get rid of most of the men, and they become those people. They take on the identities. So that's who they are. Carrington Smith. That was doodling horses in caves while we had colleges. And they saw that. They saw all of it, and they wanted it. Was this article written by the CIA? I don't believe so. I'm not sure why you would attribute it to them, but No. Let's see. Brother Harold says, master thieves, they stole countries, people, and blessing. I'm telling you, it's almost like Japheth is just non-existent. It's everything. I'm not Japheth. Shem is non-existent. It's everything Japheth. Sister Diana, I'm just gonna leave that. Oh my word. Wasn't the one that found the writings from the Watchers. Yes. Yes. Because they left them on the mountain, stones, rocks. And they found those writings and they began implementing it. Mary C. accomplished at thieving and perfected the art of staking claim to the skill sets and property of others. I'm just trying to tell you. Oh my goodness. Y'all, it is 9:51. You all know some folks will need some coffee after this. I'm going to get through a look. There's just no way I'm going to get through all of this. So look, again, I do appreciate your comments. I'm kind of scrolling down, going near the end because there's no way I'd be able to get through all those. Brother Ernest said, hoodwinked, bamboozled, tricked, fooled, and lied to. Oh my goodness. Yes, yes. Oh my goodness. Again, if you have not hit the like, please go ahead and hit the like. Lizette says, Abiyah, thank you. Let this word take root, family. I know I have to hear this word 2 more times. I want to take root. Definitely as we continue going in. Yama, man, we've been had. No kidding. But didn't the Most High's word come true? He said he would make us jealous. That's what he said. El Michelle in 2nd Esdra 6:56. As for the other people which also are of Adam, thou hast said that they are nothing but like unto spittle. Like unto spittle. Well, family, he said he would make us jealous. And I'm just trying to tell you as I read through some of the stuff, it's like my mouth is dropping open before I'm sharing it with you all, and your mouths is dropping open. Just know that. I'm reading some of this stuff going, what? Say what? You're kidding me. So just know. But again, thank you so much for tuning in. And we're giving a last call for the Zion's Wailing Women. If you're interested in joining a prayer group, you can select 1 day a week to pray with a group of ladies for 30 minutes. Pray 1 day a week. You select the day. The days and times have already been established by the prayer group. So you would join one of those groups. 30 minutes, 1 day a week. So send us an email if you would like to get connected to the other sisters in the Zion's Wailing Women's Prayer Group. All right, who is that? Neo Beta Alpha 22 says, I'm drinking coffee now. Oh my gosh, you're starting work at 11? I don't envy you on that one. I don't envy you there. Let's see. You're very welcome, Sister Terry. Just know that it's all the Most High. Definitely Him. Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Undisputed Champion. The person who asked if the article was written by the CIA is trying to say that it's misinformation. Well, if it's misinformation, who wrote it? Who wrote it? Thank you for posting that. Yeah, but anyway, that's what they've been up to. So, yes, then just go back and listen to the live. So, again, family, some folks' eyes are probably rolling around in their heads. It was a lot. I know it was a lot. So, that's why I just wanted to go right on and dig into it. But I do appreciate you hanging in there with me, family. And until next time, be blessed.